Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about Team Ineos and about Tom Pidcock. There's been a lot of stuff written in the papers, and if I take you into one of the articles in Velo News, it has none other than Sean Kelly making comments there with Tom Pidcock, saying that Tom Pidcock's going to have to give up the mountain bike events if he really wants to get better up on the road. I've said that many times throughout the Butterfly Effect and Beyond the Coverage in this 2024 season and probably in 2023 too, because Tom Pidcock racing multiple disciplines makes it very complicated to stay directly focused just on the road. If I take you into this year's Tour of Suisse, where we saw there where Tom Pidcock had a pretty good ride coming into Tour of Suisse, finishing top 10, 6th on the general classification, going top 10 in the individual time trial. And then after this year's Butterfly Effect, the last stage there of Tour of Suisse, when I figured out that Tom Pidcock's going over to do mountain bike events, I told you guys then that it was a dangerous scenario to leave Tour of Suisse, go over to a mountain bike event so that you can qualify with some points to go over and do the Olympics, and then of course start the Tour de France. There's only 2 weeks between Tour of Suisse finishing and the Tour de France starting, so Tom Pidcock wants you, I've already been in Switzerland doing a week-long race there, finishing that up, and then traveling over to a mountain bike event where you're going to have the cross-country race. We're talking about an hour and a half, 2-hour event, a little bit of warm-up, a little bit of cool-down afterwards, and then we're talking about the short track, which is really 30 minutes worth of effort, a little bit of warm-up, a little bit of cool-down after that. It's not ideal training. You leave Tour of Suisse where the form's starting to go all the way up, and then instead of going directly back home, you're traveling over someplace else. You're losing some time. Okay, Suisse is in Switzerland, and the cross-country race was in Switzerland too. So the travel wouldn't be that big, but you're still losing that half a day and that day of rest. And then let's say he's getting there right after Tour of Suisse. You're there for the whole week, all the way to the weekend, so you're training in places you're not familiar with, and you're going to end up losing some kind of road fitness. We saw that when the Tour de France started here in 2024, where Tom Pidcock's form had dropped down a little bit. We fast forward you into the end of the season at Tour of Lombardy, which is really the highlight of all the stress coming in between the two parties of Ineos and Tom Pidcock. Clearly, the only thing that I know for sure, that anybody knows for sure that's not directly attached there to Tom Pidcock and Team Ineos, is that both parties are incredibly unhappy with each other because before Tour of Lombardy starts, Tom Pidcock's kicked off the roster. And Tom Pidcock's form, to me, looked like it was just starting to come on the up and up after getting second at Giro Emilia, and then following that up at Tour of Lombardy, where I think we would have saw a nice ride from the British rider there, but instead he got kicked off, and we see the drama start. Now, if we back the film up a little bit, there's some interviews in early September where Tom Pidcock said Ineos are not helping him to find that 100% form. They're not doing a great job with him. He's not happy with how the organization is going to get him ready for the road fitness that he needs. Okay, we know that for sure. He says there he's unhappy. We know Zach Dempster, the director sportif for Ineos, when he says it's a management decision that kicked him off at Tour of Lombardi. I always like reading those kind of articles when the manager's telling you it's a management decision. He is the manager, so Zach Dempster's telling us he kicked him off. Okay, but then if we go back up to that article with Garrett Thomas, way back where Garrett Thomas said, well, they do basically a majority rule over there at Ineos. It's no longer a dictatorship to decide the way the racing goes and decide what's happening within the team of Ineos. He said he kind of preferred it in the old days where it was a dictator that just dropped the hammer down and said, this is how we're going to do it. Well, it's a little bit different run there, and you see Garrett Thomas saying there's some issues with Ineos. Of course, you see Tom Pidcock. He's unhappy. We know that for sure. And, of course, if I take you back into the Giro d'Italia on the first few stages there at the Giro, it was our Ensman complaining, well, it was his dad complaining socially on Twitter there, talking about how the trainers over there at Team Ineos had messed up the form there of our Ensman, and that's why he was riding bad in the first week of the Giro d'Italia. We saw our Ensman get a little bit better as the Giro came through and he started finding some more form, but then we saw him suffering and read articles later after the Giro where he is gaining weight throughout the Giro and then suffering on the last stages. Still had a fine ride at the Giro when it was all said and done, but if he'd come into the Giro 100% better, well, maybe he would have had a better result at the end. Either way, we know our Ensman's dad is not happy with Ineos. That means our Ensman's not happy because our Ensman's dad had to hear it from our Ensman. We know Tom Pidcock's not. We know Garrett Thomas has complained a bit with Ineos. And we know Zach Dempster, well, he says it's a management decision and he is management. Either way, there's problems over there at Ineos. Now, if I take you back to 2012, that's when we saw Chris Froome and Wiggins battling at the Tour de France. Wiggins won that year's Tour de France, and I remember watching Team Sky because I was in the race, and it was a magnificent performance throughout the whole team there, riding fantastic. But the drama starts there. So when we look at Team Ineos, it's not like this is the first time they've had drama. They had it there in 2012 between Froome and Wiggins. And then, of course, I can take you all the way up to 2018 where Geraint Thomas won the Tour de France, and there's a little bit of drama between Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas during that 3-week of racing there. Now, afterwards in 2019, Ineos, and of course with Chris Froome, crashed there at Dauphiné, warming up for the individual time trial, and that caused Chris Froome to never race again, really, for Ineos. Okay, never racing and performing as top best anyways. Then we start looking at Ineos where the fall from grace starts to drop. And I just wonder right here in 2024, when we start seeing Ineos from 2012 as Sky and then evolving all the way to Ineos into 2019, where we say Egan Bernal win the Tour de France in 2019. After that, the team really starts to drop. The drama started there at 2019 where they didn't look as dominant as they used to, but as it keeps dropping downwards and downwards, now in 2024, this team is no longer the highest ranked team in the UCI World Rankings. There's number 7. Number 7 is bad, which means, of course, when it's a management decision and you got everyone talking to each other, they're trying to figure out what's going wrong. When I look at this team and you see 5 leaders on this team, the outright best riders on the team, I think you see Egan Bernal, you see Tom Pidcock, Geraint Thomas, you see Carlos Rodriguez, and then you see Filippo Ganna. Filippo Ganna, of course, trying to carry through the individual time trials and hoping to do something in the classic campaigns, which I'm sure is what Ineos would like to see out of Filippo Ganna, but the classic campaign hasn't really carried on there with Filippo Ganna, so they've kind of failed in that aspect, not failed with Filippo Ganna. The guy is magical, but he's magical against the clock, and then at points in times, different throughout the seasons where he's been good in the stage races too and been a great support rider, if not trying to win stages himself too at the Grand Tours. But either way, Filippo Ganna has always left just a little bit of something on the table. I'm sure if you're the management over there at Ineos and you start to see that he's not quite there. Multi-million-dollar paid rider, I'm sure, 1-point-something million and over. And then you start looking over there at Egan Bernal, who had the accident in 2022, at the back of the bus in Colombia, and since then he's been struggling to find his form. It's come back up, but there's good reasons, but he's still not performing. So you have Ganna that's been fantastic, but maybe not at the absolute best that they'd like to see him. You have Egan Bernal there, that's a multiple million-dollar rider. You have Geraint Thomas, who clearly is normally only riding for a good 3 weeks, maybe 5 weeks out of the year. And if he crashed at one of those Tour de France, well, you lose those results. So Egan Bernal is taking a big budget of the team and still not riding on top form. And then you have Carlos Rodriguez, who I believe is the one rider that they expect would ride the way that he has and has earned the paycheck that they expect to pay him. Now, his results that aren't necessarily better than Geraint Thomas, where Geraint Thomas won the Tour de France, of course, in 2018. But in terms of aspect of what I believe the management over there would be looking at Carlos Rodriguez, I got to believe they're solid with the Spaniard on how he's riding, especially when you consider his age and stuff, with going 5th at the Tour de France last year, top 10 this year, winning Tour of Romandy this year, and carrying a bunch of those points over to help keep this team in the top 10. You start taking Carlos Rodriguez out of the picture, or if he started riding bad, you'd lose a lot of UCI points, and who knows how bad Ineos would drop down the pecking order of the UCI teams. It could be just a complete disaster. But you look a little bit deeper at the team, and you start looking there at Tom Pidcock. Again, the only thing that's clear is both parties, Ineos and Tom Pidcock, are unhappy here, which now we start seeing the dilemma and start seeing teams coming in here trying to grab Tom Pidcock away. But before you let him go, if you're Team Ineos, you got to look at him, if you're looking at him the same way I am anyways, and you see that last interview in early September there from Tom Pidcock where he said he would like to start focusing on the road. If Tom Pidcock's telling me he wants to start focusing on the road, and I've already spent multiple millions of dollars to keep him through these last few seasons here at the European Peloton, and he says, I want to go 100% into the road, well, I got to believe I'd want to find that $2.5 million contract again, or whatever it is he's making. Either way, Geraint Thomas in one of his interviews says Tom Pidcock's the highest paid rider on Ineos, so it has to be solid money. But if I'm Ineos and he's saying I want to focus 100% on the road right now and get rid of that mountain bike ridiculous stuff, I would never accept that with the kind of money he's getting paid. Whether if he's winning gold medals or not, he's not winning gold medals when he's on the road. And Team Ineos, of course, are going to look really bad if they start dropping any more places on the UCI calendar. So with Tom Pidcock's interview saying, hey, I'm ready to focus on the road, is what he told his woman. Well, if that's the case, then I'm signing Tom Pidcock for one more year for sure. He's already signed for multiple years with Team Ineos, but clearly other teams are trying to buy him out. So with that in mind, I don't understand why they would have kicked him off of Tour of Lombardy if Tom Pidcock said, hey, I'm focusing 100% on the road. If Ineos is, that's what they're looking for. This kid could be that one bump in the energy that Ineos need to start coming back up the ladder there on the UCI team rankings, because 7th right now for one of the highest budgeted teams in the professional peloton is just not good enough. If you looked at them, you said they were 3rd or 4th, I'd say that's okay. But when you look at their season and they finished 7th in the rankings at this moment, time of shooting the videos, and you look at their wins, they have 14 UCI wins. But really only about 7 of those are quality, and Tom Pidcock's got one of the biggest ones at the Amstel Gold. But the other big thing about Tom Pidcock, when you look at a Strade Bianche win, you look, of course, at the Tour de France that he won a couple of years back there on Alpe d'Huez stage. Well, you start looking at that, and then you start looking at 2nd at Liège, Bastogne-Liège, and a lot of other results where he might not have won, but he's up there with the best in the world. I got to believe if he's telling me I'm 100% focused and mountain bike season's out, the cyclocross season, I don't care if you want to race cyclocross as long as you cut it a little bit shorter. But if you're going to focus mainly on the road, I got to believe I find the money for Tom Pidcock, and I got to believe I would have started him at Tour of Lombardy if I'm the director sportif, Zach Dempster. Either way, it looks like a bad show over there, and certainly both parties are completely unhappy. So somebody's going to have a little middleman come together and try to make Tom Pidcock happy and a little more satisfied with whatever problems he has going on with Ineos, and Ineos have to find whatever problems they got going on with Tom Pidcock, and hopefully he can fix those problems. Ineos can fix that. We could see Tom Pidcock come on full-time, 100% for road racing in 2025. Because right now, that's one of the things I'd really like to see. Can Tom Pidcock perform with the 4 best GC racers on the first page of the Butterfly Effect and Beyond the Coverage? I believe he can be up there at least ahead of everybody else behind those guys, and then maybe be up there where he's performing with Remco Evenepoel when he's slightly off form, and with Primoz Roglic when he's slightly off form. We already know Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogačar, they don't come off form that often. But the other two, Primoz Roglic and Remco Evenepoel, have those off days where I think a Tom Pidcock, if he can get that little bit better form, he can come up there and ride with the best in the world and certainly be able to follow him, and we can see some more exciting bike racing in 2025. Right now, we don't know. We got to guess what the problem is, but I'm sure the drama is going to come out here between Tom Pidcock and between Team Ineos in the coming months here of the winter time of the 24 season, because 25 is getting ready to start. Now, will we see Tom Pidcock riding for another team, or will Ineos and Tom Pidcock iron it all out, get the kid racing 100% for next year? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to find out soon enough. Like and subscribe, and when it comes out, I'll give it to you. See you on the next edition real soon.